Welcome back. We're live from Paris on France 24. The headlines then. A close aide to the ousted leader of Myanmar, Aung San Suu Kyi, arrested along with 4 other key players in a new crackdown by the military there. Once again, protesters are out on the street in defiance. Donald Trump's impeachment trial has shown a graphic security video of some of the most alarming moments of the invasion of the Capitol last month. House prosecutors saying the mob broke in to hunt lawmakers down. We'll hear from our correspondent in Washington shortly. And one of Saudi Arabia's most prominent political activists has been released from prison. Lojain Al-Haftlal serving nearly 3 years on charges that sparked an international uproar over the kingdom's human rights record. Good to have you with us then. We're live from Paris here on France 24. I'm Stuart Norval. Also coming up for you in this half hour, we're going up in the air to show you this new version of the crop circle. They're actually snow drawings created for you here in Finland. So a close aide arrested, 4 other leading political figures as well, new sanctions, a new crackdown on protesters and a new crackdown on the internet. The latest from Myanmar as the military junta continues to impose its authority there. The aide to the ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi and 4 others detained in a new wave of arrests, along with reports as well of members of the Electoral Commission being taken away. Demonstrations, as you can see here, entering a 6th day as the US President Joe Biden also approved an executive order for new sanctions on those responsible for the coup as he repeated demands for the generals to give up power and free civilian leaders. Cole Stangler has this report.
Gathering in downtown Yangon and in a handful of cities across the country, protesters were back on the streets Thursday, showing their opposition to the military coup. Among the demonstrators, men donning skirts to draw international attention, and members of ethnic minorities, including the Karen group. But the 6th consecutive day of protests also followed a new wave of arrests, according to an official from the party of ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi. Overnight, authorities detained Kyaw Tsin Sway, a close aide to the former leader, as well as at least 4 others linked to her deposed civilian government.
Seems to be a sort of second wave of arrests from the military after those initial arrests on February 1st when they launched the coup. I think it's important to note that these are arbitrary detentions under international law and illegal. It seems that they have been targeting election officials as well as political leaders and activists across the country.
Burmese officials have not commented on the latest arrests. In the meantime, concern is growing among NGOs and activists that the military government is preparing a crackdown on the internet and social media.
Now, hang Mike Pence, they shout in the video, whilst outside the Capitol a makeshift gallows is erected. Just one of the more disturbing scenes from graphic security video shown in Donald Trump's impeachment trial as people, some in full combat gear, search for Pence and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. In another scene, Senator Mitt Romney is seen being whisked away down a hallway to avoid the mob. He said he didn't realise how close he'd been to danger. House prosecutors saying they did it because Donald Trump sent them on this mission. His mob broke into the Capitol to hunt them down.
It will show that Donald Trump surrendered his role as commander-in-chief and became the inciter-in-chief of a dangerous insurrection. And this was, as one of our colleagues put it so cogently on January 6th itself, the greatest betrayal of the presidential oath in the history of the United States.
Well, let's have the latest on that from Washington. Here's our correspondent there, Ketavan Gorjestani.
This never seen before footage is actually security footage from the halls of the Capitol building, and it was one of the key parts of the opening arguments of the impeachment managers, which was to focus on the timeline of events, what happened inside and outside the Capitol building. And we had seen a lot of what had happened on the side of the rioters, not so much what had happened in the halls of Congress, and we saw how close several leaders came to really coming face to face with the mob, and possibly something much more difficult to deal with. And among those leaders was Vice President Mike Pence. We had seen reports that he had come very close to coming face to face with the mob. We finally had the video of him being ushered out from the Senate chambers, out on the stairs with his family, with his security detail. We saw Senate Majority Leader now, Chuck Schumer, who was taken away by his security detail and all of a sudden had to turn around and run in the opposite direction because they knew that the mob was coming at the other end of the hall. And you saw also Senator Mitt Romney. He was also trying to run for cover. And then you see this Capitol Police officer, Goodman, who was the black police officer who diverted the mob away from the Senate chamber. Well, he also probably prevented Senator Mitt Romney from getting harmed by this mob, because as he was running, he told the senator to turn around and run away in the other direction, avoiding him to really meet this mob in those halls of the Congress.
Ketevan Gorgestani there. Let's have a look at some other world news now. And Iran has started producing uranium metal in a fresh breach of the limits laid out in Tehran's 2015 deal with world powers. It's according to the UN nuclear watchdog. The latest violation, right as Iran warned that time is running out for new US President Joe Biden's administration to save the agreement. Health authorities in Australia's Victoria state have ramped up contact tracing and prepared for more mass testing of residents in Melbourne after a new COVID-19 cluster linked to a quarantine hotel grew to 8 cases. More than 22,500 test results conducted in Australia's second most populous city, as the authorities urge residents to get tested amid fears of community transmission from a worker at the Holiday Inn in the city. And it is safe and it can be used for people aged over 65. The World Health Organization issuing interim recommendations for when and how the AstraZeneca Oxford COVID-19 vaccine can and should be used. The announcement after the vaccine suffered setbacks, raising questions about whether it should be used on older people or in places where the South Africa variant of the virus is circulating. Haitian police have fired tear gas on hundreds of protesters marching against President Jovenel Moïse in Port-au-Prince. Journalists also attacked in that demonstration in the latest clashes to mark the country's political crisis. The protesters accusing Moïse of illegally extending his term in office, which they say should have ended last weekend. Haiti's foreign minister, though, telling France 24 that the demonstrations are unacceptable, as he again said there'd been an assassination attempt on the president at the weekend.
We have very, very strong evidence. The voice notes are out there publicly. Everyone can listen as they please what they are saying, trying to not only overthrow the president, but to assassinate him. This is unacceptable. We think those practices were outmoded in our history, and it's very bizarre in the modern time that the only way you think to have power is to kill the president, to assassinate the president, and then proclaim yourself, or self-proclamation that you are president.
Now, one of Saudi Arabia's most prominent political activists has been released from prison. Lojain Al-Hathlal, serving nearly 3 years on charges that sparked, really an international uproar over the kingdom's human rights record. She'd pushed to end a ban on women driving in the country and was then sentenced under a broad counter-terrorism law. Yuka Roya reports.
Reunited with her family after 1,001 days behind bars. One of Lojain Al-Hatlal's sisters shared this photo of her following her release via social media. The international community welcomes the news including the French president, who said he shared her family's relief. Late last year, the 31-year-old women's rights activist was sentenced to 5 years and 8 months in prison for terrorism-related crimes, including inciting regime change and seeking to disrupt public order. The court then suspended a part of that jail term. Her sister Alia had earlier voiced hope that the election of Joe Biden in the United States, vowing to take a tougher stance on Riyadh over human rights, would have an influence.
Saudi Arabia is fearing the new American administration. I would like to call my leaders, my Saudi leaders, to say, this is the time. Do not embarrass yourself anymore.
After campaigning for years against Saudi Arabia's guardianship system, which bars women from travelling without a male relative, she was arrested in 2018 along with a dozen other activists. This just weeks before the kingdom allowed women to drive, one of the rights she had called for. Although freed from jail, Al-Hadlul is placed under tight surveillance and banned from leaving the country for 5 years.
Lujain is an example for somebody should be treated as a hero. But unfortunately, in Saudi Arabia, a hero like Lujain is now banned from traveling, have been in jail, tortured and sexually harassed for the last 1,000 days.
An appeals court has refused to investigate Al-Hadlul's claim that she suffered torture.
Yemen's Houthi rebels have targeted an airport in southwestern Saudi Arabia with bomb-laden drones, causing a civilian plane on the tarmac to catch fire. The attack threatening now to escalate Yemen's grinding war. The damaged plane serving as a powerful reminder of the danger the Houthi rebels still pose to the Saudis 6 years after they launched a bombing campaign on Yemen. Nadia Massi reports.
Remnants of a weaponized drone lying on the tarmac at Saudi Arabia's Abha airport. The aftermath of an attack by Houthi rebels from Yemen that left a gaping hole in this civilian aircraft. Nobody was injured, but the incident is just the latest example of Houthi forces stepping up attacks just as Joe Biden attempts to reset America's relations with Saudi Arabia and with Yemen. Last week, the Biden administration announced the United States would end its support for the Saudi-led military campaign in Yemen and would no longer list the Houthis as a terrorist group. All evidence Biden is seeking to loosen the close ties with Riyadh fostered during the Trump years. Nonetheless, the White House has made it clear attacks on Saudi soil are unacceptable.
Let me first say that we condemn the Houthi attack today at the Abha International Airport in Saudi Arabia, a civilian airport. The Houthis, meanwhile, continually demonstrate a desire to prolong the war by attacking Saudi Arabia, including attacks on citizens.
The Biden administration is hoping to kickstart negotiations to end the war in Yemen, sending a new diplomatic team to the region this week as the fighting continues.
Now to the idea of coronavirus vaccination passports, the ability to travel, of course, or do anything because you have a passport to say you've had a vaccine. Highly controversial, of course, but in the midst of a high rate of transmission in Greece and the reimposition of stricter coronavirus measures, well, the country is really looking at the option as they think ahead to the summer holiday season there. Well, earlier we spoke to our correspondent Natalie Savarakis in Athens.
Prime Minister is really pinning his hopes on this one. He's been a proponent in Europe to kind of push through with this green passport, if you will, like a certificate attesting to the fact that you have been vaccinated against COVID-19. Now, 1 in 5 in Greece works in the tourism sector, so it's pretty important. Last year, the country was kind of relying on tourism, flocking back in, but it was badly hit. Only 25% of our ordinary arrivals came in. It kind of explains why Greece's position has been so adamant in the EU. So far, there's kind of skepticism for a variety of reasons, including, breach of data protection, etc., discrimination as well. But earlier this week, Greece managed to clinch a deal with Israel. I remind our viewers that Israel is actually racing ahead with its vaccination drive. And so they're kind of hoping that this summer soon enough, all Israelis who have a certificate that they have been vaccinated will be allowed to kind of freely travel to Greece without any sort of restrictions.
Natalie Zavarakis there, a correspondent in Athens. Now, the first major demonstration this year by Thailand's student-led pro-democracy movement has turned into a confrontation with the police. More than 1,000 people in central Bangkok with arrests made. The rally focusing on the detention of 4 top protest leaders charged with defaming the monarchy.
Scuffles with police and multiple arrests as more than 1,000 Thai protesters marched through the streets of Bangkok on Wednesday. The demonstration was organised by the Karna Ratsadorn movement, which last year campaigned for the resignation of Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha and his government, also calling for the constitution to be amended and for reform of the monarchy. Wednesday's rally focused on the detention of 4 top protest leaders who've been charged with defaming the monarchy, a crime under Thailand's strict lèse-majesté law. It carries a penalty of 3 to 15 years in prison on each count. The protest movement is seeking to get the law abolished. After several speeches were given, protest leaders led their supporters to the police station where the activists were being held to demand their release.
If you just